Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading. And thank you for subscribing to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I am your boy, 12 Kyle. Man, check this out. On this episode, what I want to talk about is road trips. If you're like me, you probably had your fair share of road trips in your lifetime. But I want to go back a little bit because road trips now are vastly different than they were for me as a child. Of course, now I'm an adult. I'm married. I have kids. And so things are a little bit different, but I want to kind of compare and contrast, how it was back in the day, in the old days, as opposed to now. In some ways, it's a lot better. In some ways, it's worse. Here's what I'll say just to start things off. As far as road trips are concerned, I absolutely loved taking a road trip as a child. As an adult, not so much. And that's because, okay, let me think. I think I didn't take my first airplane flight until, I want to say my first airplane flight was to LA for the Super Bowl in 1987. So I was in middle school. So from childbirth up into middle school, all I did was, anytime we needed to go out of town, in particular if it was a long trip, we would drive. So I didn't know the experience of flying until I got to middle school. And I flew a couple of times in middle school and high school. But, pretty much road trips was my thing. And the reason why road trips were a thing was because of where I live. As many of you know, or maybe you don't know, I grew up in Florence, South Carolina, which if you're familiar with South Carolina, Florence is it's actually the midway point between New York City and Miami. And it's right down Interstate 95. It's also where Interstate 20 starts at, or ends, I should say, if you're coming east, if you're coming from the west to the east. But yeah, so it's kind of like in the middle, if you will. And we took a lot of road trips when I was a kid. And like I said, back then, that road trip was dope, man. I mean, it was everything. It was everything to get in the car and just ride. Now it's a little different because obviously with me being, a grown man with kids and a wife, I'm doing the driving. So I remember even, watching a movie called National Lampoon's Vacation and starring Chevy Chase. And that movie was funny to me as a child. But, now as I've gotten older, I kind of understand where Chevy's coming from. Chevy didn't want to make that drive across the country. And fortunately for me, I haven't had to drive across the country, but I have made some long road trips. But yeah, back in the day, it was different. And one of the reasons why it was different was because, honestly, if you got lost or you didn't know where you were going, you used a road map. Road, to me, as someone who is a geography buff, geography is my favorite subject ever. For someone like me who is a geography buff, I would study road maps. Like there are very few major metropolitan cities in the United States that I don't know a little bit about. And the only reason why I know about these cities is because I studied them on the map. I would literally get a map and just look at the map and just study it. Like the almanac, World Almanac map, I guess used to come out, Road Atlas, whatever. We would have one of those in the car and I would just study it. I just go from city to city, go from state to state, looking at the bigger cities and everything. And I was just like a nerd like that when it came to the United States as far as the cities are concerned, the topography that you saw and everything. So road maps were the joint. So like, I don't ever remember us getting lost, but I do know if you ever got lost, if you knew how to read a map, then you were okay. Now because of technology nowadays, there's probably very few people that know how to read a map. Because I mean, what do you need a map for? All you got to do is go to your Google machine and pull it up, or go to a traffic app or something like that. Yeah, that was fun. That was fun. And the cool part about road trips back then, growing up, particularly in the '80s, all you had was it, just your imagination and road maps, and the radio. And I'll get on that in a second. But I mentioned earlier, I took a lot of road trips, and the reason being is because I know I've mentioned this on this podcast before, but it's worth repeating. Although I grew up in South Carolina, I wasn't born in South Carolina. I was born in New Jersey. So my parents moved from New Jersey to South Carolina when I was 3, right? And my dad is from New Jersey originally. My mom is from Florence. My dad is originally from Newark. This is where I was born, Newark, New Jersey. And so we still had, so growing up, all of my dad's side of the family was in Newark. My mom's side of the family is in Florence. And we would make, road trips or whatever to, New Jersey. And at least a couple of times a year during the summertime, definitely for the holidays. Thanksgiving was always dope because we always seemed to go to New Jersey for Thanksgiving. My uncle, who played for the New York Football Giants, he lived in New Jersey at the time. So, well, he still does. So my uncle, his name is Harry Carson. He played for the Giants. And so, we'd go see him on holidays sometimes. And so we always made these trips to New Jersey. So the ride from my hometown of Florence, South Carolina to Newark roughly is about 11 hours, give or take. And so it's straight up I-95, Interstate 95. And then when you get to New Jersey, you got to get on the New Jersey Turnpike and then the Garden State Parkway. I know that like the back of my hand, and I haven't taken that trip in like forever, but I still know it. Like I still know the exits. I know the smell of New Jersey, like the back of my hand. But anyway, but yeah, that was my favorite trip. That was my favorite road trip, and although it was an 11-hour drive, it never felt like a long drive. Particularly for us when we were coming up north, and you would get to like once you got to Richmond, Virginia, like that's when you knew you're like, oh man, it's close. You're like, technically we weren't close, but it felt that way because you were going through cities at this point. Because on I-95 you would go through Richmond and then DC. Oh, excuse me, Baltimore, then DC, or DC, Baltimore. I can't remember which one we came through first. I want to say we came through Baltimore first, then DC. And no matter what time you came through DC, there was always some traffic, man. Always some traffic. I remember one year, my mom, they tried to get slick and they were like, "Oh, we're gonna avoid the traffic. We're gonna go through downtown DC." Yeah. And it just so happened that Reagan was doing something that day, and man, we were stuck in traffic for like another whole hour just because of the presidential motorcade. But yeah, I love those trips, man. Those trips were a sight to see. Like I said, Richmond, Baltimore. I love going through Baltimore because Baltimore had the Harbor Tunnel. And for me, that was the first, going through that tunnel was the first time that I'd ever gone through a tunnel before. And so like one time, I think I probably was like 8 or 9. My mom kind of explained the concept like, hey, we're going in this tunnel and it goes under the ground and above us is water. And we're like, wow, we're going underwater. So like it was always a dope thing to go underwater, if you will. So yeah, I love the road trips. And just some of the sites that you would see. When we would get to Maryland, there's a bridge, and I don't know I want to say it's called. I think it's called the Millard Tidings Bridge. I think that I haven't looked it up, so sue me. But nonetheless, there's a bridge, and I want to paint this picture for how it actually looks coming across this bridge. So the bridge is straight. It's straight. It's you don't go up, you don't go down or anything. It's just straight across. But here's the thing. On one side of the bridge is a mountain. On one side of the highway is a mountain. On the other side is a mountain. And then there's a mountain across, and then there's a mountain across on the other side of the highway as well. So it's basically the highway splits these two mountains. And there's probably about maybe a 2 mile. The bridge is probably, I'm guessing the bridge is probably about 2 miles. Well, there's a sign. There's a sign before you get to the bridge. And the sign says something to the effect of crosswinds ahead, proceed with caution. And so I'm like, as a kid, you don't really think about that. And they had to explain this to me one time. But on that particular bridge, because the bridge is cutting through basically a mountain, there's mountains on both sides. There are crosswinds that are coming through. Of course, you can't see the winds, but they're crosswinds. And the crosswinds are can be very heavy at times. And when the crosswinds are blowing heavy, it literally and figuratively can move your car. And I'll never forget one time we were coming across that bridge and there was an 18-wheeler ahead of us. And there's only 2 lanes, right? There's 2 lanes on each side of the highway. And so there's an 18-wheeler and then there's a Volkswagen Jetta like right beside it. And we got to probably about the midpoint of the bridge where the crosswinds were happening. And you could literally see that Jetta slowly inching towards the 18-wheeler as the wind is pushing it almost into the 18-wheeler. And my mom just slowed down as slow as she could without hitting the brakes you can literally feel the car moving. And so I don't know, for some reason I got a kick out of riding over that bridge. But it would be the things we'd see on the way on the road trip. One of the places we would always stop to eat is Roy Rogers. Roy Rogers still open? I don't know if Roy Rogers is still open, but Roy Rogers has some good chicken. That's what I remember about Roy Rogers. But yeah, the New Jersey Turnpike. Once we got on the New Jersey Turnpike, I always knew we were close to being, at our destination of Newark and the Garden State Parkway. But I absolutely love those road trips. I mean, those road trips were the best of times. I remember the games we would play. We would sleep a lot, obviously, because, you're a kid. You're 9, 10 years old. What are you going to do? It's not like you can just flip out your cordless phone or something. And one of the things that was always interesting was we had, when we stopped for gas, you better go to the bathroom. I remember one time we stopped for gas and food, and I decided not to go to the bathroom. I was like, no, I don't have to go, which is a bad move for a kid. You don't want to slow everybody up, because see, here's the thing. When we would go to New Jersey, sometimes it would be not just my family, but my cousins, my aunts. So we might be 2 or 3 cars deep, right? So you don't want to so everybody's going to stop and get gas at the same time. Everybody's going to eat at the same time. Everybody's going to go to the bathroom at the same time, so forth and so on, right? So here's me. I don't go to the bathroom at Roy Rogers. We're somewhere in Maryland, and we're get back on the road. And 10 minutes into the trip, I'm like, hey, I got to go to the bathroom. I got to pee. My mom was like, what? And so again, there's no cell phone. I'm like 10. This is like 82. So there's no cell phone. So there's no, she can't call her sister who's driving behind her like, hey, Kyle needs to go to the bathroom. So my mom said, what? You got to pee? Why you didn't pee when we were at Roy Rogers? I was like, I didn't have to go. And plus I drank a big ass soda too. My mom's like, you better pee in that bottle. So young 12 Kyle ends up peeing in a bottle. No, I peed in a cup. I'm sorry. Ended up peeing in a cup because my mom didn't want to stop so I could go to the bathroom because I was being hard-headed. Funny stuff like that. I got to call her a reminder of that. Those are the things that I just remember about those road trips, man. Those road trips were everything. And then, of course, like I said, we would stop for food. But, black folk. I'm not sure about any other people that listen to this podcast, but black folk, y'all know what we do when we go on a road trip. You got to take your own food too as well, right? Because, you ain't stopping at McDonald's every time, to eat. And so the first part of the road trip, you might be eating some food that you brought from home. And it never failed. We always had chicken. We always had fried chicken. Man, my aunt would cook up the best. To this day, she still makes the best fried chicken in the world. She cooked that fried chicken, man, and they'd have it in some containers. And by this time, the chicken ain't hot no more. It's kind of lukewarm. It might even be cold, but it was dope. You ain't even care. You eat cold chicken. It'd be cool. So cold chicken was on the menu. Of course, potato chips. And then, like I said, from time to time, on the road trip, depending on the time, you'd have to stop at McDonald's. And, back in the day, going to McDonald's was a thing. Like, it wasn't, like nowadays, anybody go. I don't go to McDonald's. I do get McDonald's fries from time to time, but I haven't eaten a burger from McDonald's in years. Why would I? But, now you can go to McDonald's every day. Like, you can go to McDonald's for nothing. You go to McDonald's for a sweet tea or an apple pie. Like, it's not, there's nothing cool or sexy about going to McDonald's in 2024 at the time of this recording. But in 1982, in 83, in 85, oh man, if you got a chance to go to McDonald's at least once, man, that was like everything. Because again, it wasn't someplace that we frequented all the time. So it had to be a special occasion for you to go to McDonald's. So when you went to McDonald's, it was perfect. And I love going to McDonald's on the road. But those road trips, like I said, were everything. Like I said, the trip to New Jersey is my favorite trip every year. We'd go quite often. Before I forget, I remember when we were, I think I was 16. Yeah, I was like 16. And my mom is a great driver, but she is fearful of a particular bridge on the trip. Now, if you're familiar with, and I know Babi and Maya are going to get a kick out of this. I think I may have told them this, but when you come out of Delaware going into New Jersey, before you get on the New Jersey Turnpike, you have to cross over I think it's called the Delaware Memorial Bridge. Anyway, this bridge is huge. This bridge goes like straight up and comes straight down. And even from afar, it looks pretty intimidating, or at least it did to me as a 16-year-old kid. And I remember one year, man, it was just me, my mom, and Damon, my brother, my younger brother. And my mom was like, okay, I'm going to have to call an escort. And I was like, what? What do you mean? And she was like, well, I don't drive across this. And I never knew this up until I was 16. My mom has never driven across that bridge for as many times as we've gone to New Jersey. Like either my aunts would drive or somebody else would drive. Like she would never drive. And this particular time, and I didn't know that you could actually do this, but you can actually get a police escort to actually, You pull your car over, and there's like a little police station right before you get right before you get on pay the toll to cross the bridge. Because again, you're going from Delaware into New Jersey, and coming back, you can do the same thing. You can actually have a police officer drive if you're fearful of bridges. You can actually have a police officer get in your car and drive you across the bridge, and then they'll, I guess, make their way back to wherever they were. But yeah, I was 16 and we were going to New Jersey, and she was like, "I'm not driving across this bridge," and I was like, "Huh?" And she was like, "No, I'm not driving across this bridge," and she didn't drive across the bridge. She actually pulled over, and we got an escort. A little white man little white cop got in the car. And he was talking to us. He drove us across the bridge, got out. We went on about our way. And what was interesting was I had just gotten my license. So she got the escort when we were going to New Jersey. But when we were coming back to South Carolina, she was like, I drove. I actually drove. Because I was driving on the New Jersey Turnpike and the Garden State Parkway. And this is my first time driving on the interstate, ever. I mean, I've been driving for a couple of years, but this is my first time driving on the interstate. And my mom was like, "You think you can handle it?" I was like, "Yeah, I can handle it. I got it." I mean, I wasn't scared, but her nervousness had me scared. So, two-hand driving, I was locked in like this, and I just stared at the road. I didn't look over to my left, didn't look over to my right. Or anything. I didn't want to see the water, the beautiful, what is it, Delaware, wherever, I think. Yeah, I didn't want to see none of that. And if you look over on this side, it's Philadelphia from the distance. I drove across the bridge, and she was thankful. And she's never driven across that bridge. That was another fun part of our road trip, is that, that passing of the torch too, because once I got my license and had been driving because I think I got my license at 14, 15, I think. She let me drive parts of the trip. So, that's when you really feel big time as a young man. Your mom or your dad give you the keys and you're able to kind of drive the family. Let's see, what's my least favorite? It's not my least favorite trip. It's the least favorite part of a trip. As many of you know, I live in Atlanta. And then, so in Atlanta, you have to take Interstate 20 East, because I told you it ends in Florence. So you take Interstate 20 East to Florence. It's about a 4-hour drive from my house, right? To my hometown. The area between Atlanta and Augusta, oh my God, that's my least favorite part of the trip, because there's absolutely, positively, unequivocally nothing between Atlanta and Augusta. It's just woods, man. I mean, it's not even you get to a certain point where there are not even a lot of exits. So there's really nothing to look at. So if you don't have a conversation going on in your car, you need to be on the phone. You need to be listening to something dope, because that's the only thing that's going to get you through that part of the trip, because that's the most boring part of the trip. So yeah, that's not my, I mean, and I made that trip 1,000 times, and thank God I've always made it safely. But yeah, my least favorite road trip is when I go back to the crib, or even when I go to Orangeburg, where I went to school. You still have to go on I-20, and you still have to drive between Augusta and Atlanta. And again, there's nothing there. Absolutely nothing there. And it is best to take that trip during the day. Because if you take it at night, man, listen, you might see deer, you might see cows, you might see werewolves, you might see polar bears, you might see anything. The worst trip, this is funny. The worst trip that I had, worst road trip, and I will say unequivocally, the worst road trip that I had is my fault. And I'm going to tell you why it was my fault. Okay. So I went to Orangeburg. I want to say this is probably like 97. Yeah, it's 97. So fall of 97. I just graduated South Carolina State in 1990, December 1996. I just moved to Atlanta. So I'm about 3.5 hours away from Orangeburg. Now, what's key is that the reason why I was going to Orangeburg was because my then girlfriend, now wife, Sharice, was still in school. So I'm going to see Sharice. So I went to see Sharice one weekend, and I got there on a Friday, and I left after work, I think, and got there, and we this Friday night we kicking it or whatever. I think we went to go get something to eat, and that night I don't know what after we came back from eating, um, we got into an argument. We got into a really bad argument, and so me, I'm trying to be tough guy. Words were said. I can't remember. Again, so long ago, I can't remember what we were arguing about. But I was like, if you act like this, I'm gonna leave. And she was like, all right, go. Oh, that's all I needed to hear. I was like, all right, I'm leaving. And so she thought that I don't think she thought that I was really leaving. And so I grabbed my bags, put them in the car, and she was like, you leaving for real? I was like, yeah, I'm leaving. She's like, no, don't go. Because at this point, it's midnight. It's Friday. Again, I just worked all day and I drove, and I'd only been in Orangeburg for a couple of hours. And again, Orangeburg's 3.5 hours from my place in Atlanta. And I've let anger and hard headedness get in the way. And now I'm about to show her I'm leaving because we had already, planned all this stuff to do the next day and everything. But she pissed me off and I pissed her off. And I was just like, no, I'm leaving. And so I don't think she really meant for me to leave. I don't think she really thought that I would leave. But I left. Bad move. Bad move. Man, listen. The first hour of the trip was dope. It was cool. I mean, I was fine. I was listening to music. I had some beef jerky in the car. Some beef jerky and a Mellow Yellow, which is probably the nastiest thing you ever want to put your lips on. Pause. And so I get to the point where I get on the other side of Augusta. And like I just mentioned to you guys, there's nothing between Atlanta and Augusta. Well, now I'm going from Augusta to Atlanta. And Augusta's roughly about 2 hours from here. A little less than 2 hours. Man, listen. I was falling asleep driving. I didn't realize that I was getting like my eyes were getting heavy. But again, I'd been up since like 6 a.m. and I'd just driven 3.5 hours to Orangeburg. And now here I am. Because I'm mad, I'm driving back. Again, there's no cell phone. There's no, I don't even think I had I did have a pager. I had a pager. But I have no way to talk to her. I have no way to stay awake. I have nobody to call or anything. The only thing I had was a radio. I rolled the windows down in my car. I had beef jerky and a Mellow Yellow soda. And at one point, I do remember I was listening to music and I could actually feel my eyelids getting heavy and my blinks were getting longer and longer. And next thing I know, I hear I am running off the side of the road. Scary as hell. And I jerk the car back on and I'm like, my heart's racing and I'm like, yo, you got to snap out of this. So I pulled over to a little gas station, got me some coffee. I'm drinking I don't even drink coffee like that. I'm drinking coffee. I'm doing any and everything I can to at least get myself to Conyers, Georgia. Why I get to Conyers? Because I know if I get to Conyers, after that, you're in kind of like the city, metro Atlanta city limits. And, so now you got exits, you got lights, you got stuff going on, you got traffic. Yeah, I knew I could make it then. And I made it. Barely. Yeah, so I'd never forget that trip. So words, and I got home maybe about 3:30, and she ended up calling me, and she called me and she was like, "I was worried about you," so forth and so. I was like, "Man, I was fine." Lying my ass off. Um, as I mentioned earlier, though, family, road trips now have changed because of dynamics, and like I said, I'm a family man. Um, you know, I just remember like things were definitely different from the road trips that I experienced as a child as opposed to an adult. Um, one thing about road trips now is, when we don't take a lot of road trips now, but when we do take road trips, everybody sleep. Everybody is asleep. Nobody stays up, and of course, Dad is driving, right? I'm driving, but nobody stays up to talk to Dad. Nobody stays up to, ask Dad some questions or anything about life or anything like that. Nobody does anything. Everybody goes to sleep. And like I said, I always drive. The last time we went somewhere, I think we were going to Florence one day, and I was tired. I was tired because I worked, and I remember Cherie saying, "Well, hey, I can help you drive. I can help you drive, so forth and so on." I was like, "Okay, cool." And I was like, "Well, hey, just drive an hour." I said, "If you give me to Augusta, we're good." Man, listen, I let her. She drove. And again, we got to Conyers, Georgia, which for those of you who don't know, Conyers is probably about, I don't know, maybe about 10 minutes from my house. 15, let's say 20 minutes from my house. We were on the road probably for about the better part of 6 exits. And I look over at Sharice, and her eyelids are damn near closed. Like her blinks are so. And I'm like, "Yo, what are you doing?" She was like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "Man, you about to go to sleep." She's like, "No, I'm fine." I'm like, No. Pull over. Right there. Exit. She's like, "What you mean? What you mean?" I was like, Pull over. Man, you ain't about to crash me and my kids, man. Nah. And I had to troop it out, man. I had to do it. I was just like, nah. And ever since then, like, she never drives. I always drive, and she always falls asleep as soon as she gets in the car. So, I mean, I'm used to it, man. I'm used to it. So road trips, they're a lot different, particularly with family. I remember when we became parents for the first time with Dion, our oldest. One of the most difficult things to do on a road trip was when you have a newborn, obviously you got to feed him, right? So, she wasn't breastfeeding at the time. I think he had a bottle. So, we got the milk, we had the milk stored and everything, but the milk is cold, right? So we got to pull over to McDonald's. Well, first and foremost, we got a hollering baby who, we changed him. He's hungry. Now he's ready to eat. And he's hollering. He wants a bottle, but you can't give him cold milk, right? So you got to pull over to McDonald's. So we pull over to McDonald's, go in the bathroom, turn the water on, and you got to hold the bottle under the water for like 5 minutes for the milk to warm up. And that was just so annoying. And it just made that part of the road trip difficult as a parent, particularly new parents, because we don't know anything. So by the time our second son, Cameron, comes along, there's this invention that I didn't know existed called the car bottle warmer. You plug it into your lighter, and it automatically warms up a bottle, and you don't have to go to McDonald's and try to warm up a bottle. And I thought that was like the dopest thing for a road trip. And I promise you guys, every person that I knew that was pregnant with a child, that was my gift to them, a car bottle warmer, because I didn't want anybody to go through what I was going through on those initial road trips with Dia. And so that was different. Also, like I said, everybody goes to sleep. And then my tolerance for driving is like, It's not like what it used to be. Like when I was younger, man, if you said let's drive to Spokane, Washington from Atlanta, I'd do it. Why not? Who cares? I mean, it's just time. Now, anything beyond 5 hours. Nah, bro, got to get on a plane. Now, I have driven further than that, obviously, because Cameron, his school is an 8-hour drive from here, which is far. And I've driven to Houston from here, which is roughly about 12 hours. I mean, that's far. But it's a smooth ride. And the ride to Baton Rouge is a smooth ride from here, too, to where Cameron goes to school. But nah, man, other than that, but those are trips that I'm making with like by myself or taking Cameron back to school. That's one thing, but me driving the whole family to Baton Rouge or to Houston, no, I'm not. Again, 5 hours max. Anything outside of 5 hours, we got to fly. I'm not doing it. And so, and obviously technology's changed. So, it's not even the same anymore. Like we had back in my day, you'd be riding and what would be dope is like you find a radio station. Like let's say we're outside of Fayetteville. So you listen to 88.9 in Fayetteville. That's the R&B station. So you listen to that and you listen to that until you get out of their range. And it never failed. You would be listening to it. And let's say New Edition, Can You Stand the Rain comes on and you're listening to it. And then as you're driving out of a range and now you can't hear the song anymore. So now you're mad. And then you search the radio trying to find the next black radio station that you could find. Obviously things are much different now with technology because now everybody's got their own music. We took a road trip to South Carolina a couple of days ago, and it was just me, Skylar, and Brandon, my two youngest kids. And Brandon's 17 at the time of this recording, and Skylar's 12. She's the baby. And I looked. I'm riding, and again, Sharice wasn't with us; it was just me. And I looked, and Skylar's listening. She's got her AirPods in. She's listening to her music. Brandon's got his headphones on. He's listening to his music. And I'm like, nobody's listening to what I'm listening to. So I'm listening to podcasts. And that's vastly different from, again, times and the technology of what we had back in the 80s and 90s. You had to listen to the radio and you had to listen to whatever your mom or dad was listening to. It wasn't going to be no, hey, can you change to Power 99? No, you can't change to Power 99, bro. You got to listen to what I'm listening to. And, those dynamics make it different. I can't even remember. I think probably when Cameron was, that's our second son. When Cameron was little, there was the car DVD player. So you could actually put a DVD in the car and it was like a flip up screen and he could actually sit and watch a portable DVD, and then you had to, of course, for the people who had money, you had your cars with the TVs and the headrest, and that was entertainment. Now, you can watch anything on your phone. So it's not like you got to be tapped in. So it's just different. Like I said, road trips back then were so dope. Road trips now, they're not as dope. I mean, they're ends to the means because, obviously you got to get where you got to go. I don't mind going to, my hometown of Florence or Orangeburg where I went to school. Or driving to Florida, but I mean like, or wherever. But at the end of the day, my road trips are much better now because I can listen to, as the driver, I can listen to whatever I want to listen to. If I want to listen to podcasts, I can listen to podcasts. If I want to listen to music, I can listen to music. I can curate a podcast. I can curate a playlist if I like that will, if I've got a 5-hour drive, I got a playlist that, can take me for the entire 5-hour drive. And then you got phone calls and stuff like that. So road trips they're not what they used to be, but they're still fun. I just, like I said, just as I've gotten older, in conclusion, as I've gotten older, I've just come to appreciate the old road trips more so than I do the road trips now. Now it's just different. Not better, not worse, just different. I wish back in the day we had some of the stuff we had. I mean, I wish, I could eat some good food, some chicken wings, and not have to be subject to McDonald's and pay potato chips and cold chicken. I wish I could get pizza and that kind of stuff that you get on the road. And that's another thing too. Like, it's a lot of variety of places that you can eat as you're traveling. You can stop at Waffle House or you can stop at Burger King or someplace like that. It's not just the same thing. And again, shout out to Roy Rogers, but I mean, like, we didn't really see a lot of variety of stuff until we got, to like Virginia, Maryland, DC, that area, and then obviously New Jersey. But I love road trips, man. I love those road trips. They bring back great memories. And I told my kids a long time ago, I said, your dad used to ride to New Jersey all the time. I was like, fortunately for you guys, you won't have the same experience. You're going to fly. That's going to do it for me. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for checking out this edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already. The podcast drops every Thursday at midnight from Time to Try. We drop bonus episodes on Sundays at midnight. You can follow us on all the socials, Twitter X, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. It's at 12 Kyle, at 12 Kyle podcast across the board. If you feel so inclined, you want to throw us a couple of dollars, please do so. $TWELVEKYLE. Again, that's going to do it for me. I am your boy 12 Kyle, back with another episode talking about road trips. I'll catch you guys next time. 5,000.